Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First off, Senator Peter Cayetano and the entire membership of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, we would like to thank the NGO Forum on ADP for their invitation to this afternoon's roundtable discussion. Indeed, a discussion on the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the impact of the Philippines' decision to join this multilateral financial institution is very timely. As we all know, although some members of the civil society organization and some other leaders in government were criticizing the president for his visit to China, there is already a recognition that it's high time that we also focus on our neighboring countries. So, as the President and his allies have explained, it's not necessarily a separation from the United States and other countries. It's more of looking into what necessarily is in the best interest of the Filipino nation. So, I understand that this forum was expecting to listen to Senator Alias. In his behalf, I would like to extend his apologies. I know we wanted to hear his insights as a legislator, as a policymaker, as a close ally of the president. And in fact, some people are thinking that the best way to go to the president is to Senator Alias. I would like to disabuse of that notion. That's not necessarily true. Our office has been receiving several letters trying to reach the president. So I'm not sure where that notion came from. At nababahanan po ako ng papel ng kung ano-anong endorsement at sulat na para sa Malacanang. Hindi ko maintindihan kung bakit kailangan dumaan sa Senado. In any case, the senator unfortunately is unable to join us because he was asked to join the president of the entire Philippine contingent for the ongoing upcoming APEC negotiations in Peru. So while he's there, the members of the legislative team are focusing on his legislative and other policy-related work. So I understand you are we wanted to know what's happening about the AIIB, so I'll focus on it now. Just a quick backgrounder. What I'm giving you right now is a presentation shared with us by the Department of Finance and the Department of Foreign Affairs during ongoing hearings on this treaty in the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations. So, just a quick backgrounder. This is the timeline for the establishment of the AIIB. So, it was actually first proposed by Chinese leaders in their visits to various Southeast Asian countries in October 2013. After several consultation meetings, they were able to sign the Memorandum of Understanding on the establishment, and 21 countries, including the Philippines, signed the MOU. Some other countries, 36 of them, they were acceded to it, and then after negotiators' meetings, there were a total of 57 proposed founding members, and the signing ceremony happened on June 29 of 2015. We were actually much later pa tayo nag-sign those articles of agreement. That was on the deadliest deadline, actually the last day, 31st of December 2015, which is actually a few days after the articles, after a majority of members already acceded to it. But we were able to meet the deadline that was signed 10 a.m. of the deadline. So we were made part of the 57 founding members, and so we are, the Philippines is entitled to avail of additional 600 share votes na binibigay lang sa founding members. We'll go into more of that later. So the inaugural meeting of the AIIB and the official commencement of the operations was on the 16th of January 2016. So the question may be, what comes next now? So initially, you have to examine what is AIIB there to begin with. So when this was proposed, its intention is to foster economic development and create wealth and improve infrastructure connectivity in Asia. So unlike other multilateral financing institutions, AIIB is focused on infrastructure. So although we have funding support, we can get funding support from see the Asian Development Bank, there's also the World Bank, IPRD, and other multilateral institutions. It is only AIIB that's focused solely on infrastructure. Most of the other MDBs would look into social projects, public education. This time, focus on infrastructure. This is understandable because China really is into this build mentality. So they're building so much infrastructure because of their One Belt, One Road initiative. But that's another topic for another day. It's complicated din siya. So another purpose is to promote regional cooperation and partnership in addressing development challenges by working in close collaboration with other multilateral and bilateral development institutions. So AIIB does not seek to do away with ADB, World Bank, and other financial institutions. It's more of complementary. In fact, of the 6 projects that were already approved, most of them were actually to be co-financed. So it's not solely to be financed by AIIB, it's just an alternative source of funding. So if you have a $100 billion US dollar worth of projects, in one of the projects what we did was 40% is to be financed by the World Bank, 40% by AIIB, and another 20% from other institutions. So for the core principles, it's designed to be lean, clean, and green. Lean meaning mas konti yung memberships ng board. So they want only the highly technical staff to help para mas less din yung operational costs. And then it's designed to be clean, meaning as much as possible, zero tolerance for corruption. And then green meaning emphasis on green initiatives, green buildings. In fact, the AIIB has funding, supplementary funding to support initiatives that will help countries comply with their obligations under the Paris Agreement. Next. So, as far as membership to the AIIB is concerned, there are 27 regional members and 20 non-regional members. There's a difference in treatment between regional members and non-regional members. For example, regional members will only need 6% of the votes, 6% share votes to be able to become part of the board of directors. For non-regional members, they will need to meet a higher threshold, which is 15%. But the membership is open to all members of the ADB and the IPRD. But this time, they are allowing applicants who don't have their own, who are not sovereigns or not even responsible for the conduct of international relations of their members. Meaning, ano lang po, parang halimbawa Hong Kong, di ba? Part siya ng China. Pero pwede mag-participate sa Hong Kong School. Mga ganun. Next. So, as far as operations are concerned, they provide direct loans, equity infusions, loan guarantees, and grants. Yung sinasabi natin kanina, technical assistance to help in feasibility studies, among other things. So, as far as interest rate is concerned, it's comparable to ADB and the World Bank. Maturity is 30 years with 10 years grace period. And then for the principals, the procurement process is untied and open to all contractors. So you can have a contractor from a country which is not a member of AIIB. Unlike in the World Bank and ADB and other multilateral institutions, the requirement that you have to be from a member country or working in a project in a member country. So we'll not go much into this. It just shows na yung capitalization is divided between the regional members, 75% and 25% non-regional members. So may emphasis talaga, this time more voice to the members within the region. For the paid-in capital, it's 20% and 80%. So as far as the Philippines is concerned, we need to come up with the 196 billion US dollars para maging member, yung indicative paid-in capital natin. So the question now is, pag lalabas tayo ng we're coming out with 196 billion dollars, what will we get in return? And this is the question that is foremost in the minds of the senators during the hearings in the Senate. They're always asking, so how much do we need to release for 2017? how much all yun? So how much are we getting in return? Next slide. Just a quick note that among the countries, when it comes to capitalization requirements, the capitalization that we are giving to AIIB is not even 1%. But there's a possibility for us to get a board seat depending on how DFA and eventually our reps from the DOF will be combining with constituent countries. So there is a proposal to form constituencies with just so we're planning to form constituencies with Thailand, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Nepal, and Maldives. So the foremost question we were asking the resource persons during the hearing is why this distribution? Because the foremost goal is to get 6%, and we have to make sure that we are teaming up with countries that don't have that large voting power yet. So we are teaming up with Thailand. Thailand is dun sa number 9 line na we are joining, we are second. So pag nag-assign ng seats to be members dun sa board of directors, more likely tayo Philippine representative yung i-assign. Yun yung mga ganun consideration. So ito na yung question of why are we joining the AIIB? What's in it for the Philippines? So the AIIB, as I said earlier, will provide loan financing for infrastructure projects. So with the Duterte government's trust to build more infrastructure because of the recognition that you need good infra to be able to attract more investments, it's high time that we find more sources of financing. So it can support our infrastructure needs, it will provide additional access for concessional financing, and will be an alternative option for the private sector. So since most of our projects in the Philippines, most infrastructure projects are financed through PPP, those proponents of PPP projects can avail of this financing. It's an alternative source for them. Although there has been moves by the DOF during the budget hearings, they were telling the senators that the outlook now is to have 20% foreign loans and 80% local funding when it comes to projects. But still, there is a recognition that it's not always good to say no to other sources because you never know when you'll be needing them. So it's also an opportunity for the Philippines to further its role in being in the forefront of shaping ASEAN relations. So especially right now, because some analysts are saying that it's the rise of the BRICS. So we have to team up with countries that are developing and on their way to becoming superpowers. So it's not saying no to the World Bank that is led by the US or the ADB that is led by Japan. It's just saying that maybe it's high time we think of what our Asian counterparts can do in terms of providing financing to other projects. It's also a move to improve our bilateral relations with China. As we all know, the Philippines and China relations hasn't always been great, especially with the issues with the West Philippine Sea, or as China would call it, the South China Sea and their 9-dash line. So, if you've been following the news, you will know that the recent visits of President Duterte, together with his contingent of several businessmen going to China, came up with several MOUs or memorandums of understanding to conduct feasibility studies, so we can know which of the projects that are in the pipeline can be financed, which of them are feasible. But as the heads of the BCPA and the DOTR, Department of Transportation, and Department of DPWH has been saying, those agreements are MOUs, memorandums of understanding, with actually close to no cost to the government. these Chinese companies promise to conduct feasibility studies, so we would know if these projects will be right for financing, pero in the future.
I'm very anxious really to talk with you because I just came back from China and occasion to discuss how it is going with the officials there. And I can tell you right off that they're very enthusiastic and very anxious for us to hello? Yeah. Okay, so we're very anxious, by the way, for us to get this on the road. I hope that the ARB will be as decisive and as prompt in addressing our norms as our senators here. So I'd like to pass it on to the senators with a plea that perhaps they will really meet the deadline. It's a very strong window with the Christmas season, you know, the parties and all that sort of thing. And so I do hope that maybe you should work maybe less investigations and more on the things. For not to tell the senators what to do. In any case, let me introduce my group, the Council for Foreign Relations. We are composed basically of three groups, four. One is the Aiib. Secondly, we have retired ambassadors. Thirdly, we have retired generals and flag officers. And fourthly, we have CEOs from business. So we look holistically at issues like this. So we're looking at it from different angles. I know your interest is basically ecology, the economic impact, and the social perspective. But may I add another dimension, which is the geopolitical and the geo-economic thing, which is that's probably going out in the four corners of the agenda, but maybe it might be of interest to our students and people who have a sense of history, that we go into the historical perspective of multilateral development banks, because this is already the third generation banks. We talked about, well, the first was the World Bank. The World Bank and the IMF was the product of the Bretton Woods Agreement, 1945, I believe. Is that right? 45. Which was the brainchild of, I think, Dr. Chito and John Maynard Keynes, who was our distinguished alumni. The idea then was to many things. One was to rehabilitate the war-damaged Western Europe, which was brought to the ground by the World War. Well, they had the land lease. The U.S. trying to revive the land lease. It was clearly not enough, so they had to design a bank that would be adequate to underwrite the development of Europe. Then, from the geopolitical angle, to contain Russia, which had set up an iron wall. So it was a race for time. World Bank, IMF, working to beat the deadline to beat the Russians before the war had to be set up, which separated Europe into West and East. So the World Bank was clearly an attempt by the West to project its soft power, to rehabilitate Europe, the electoral system. Then, like 1966, Japan was on the rise. Japan was the greatest second economic power in the world, clearly dominated the economies of Asia, and I think there was that longing for Japan to revive its Asian co-prosperity sphere, which they failed to promote through the force of arms during the Second World War. So they tried the geo-economic pact. So the ADB was created in 1966. Now, more than half a century later, we have a rising behemoth that might dominate the world's economy, not really viable. It is the biggest kingdom of China. So China clearly wants to build this supply chain for the One Belt, One Road concept, which goes from China across Central Asia to South Asia, even all the way to the Caribbean, and then down the Mediterranean, down the Indian Ocean, down the Malacca Strait, and into the South China Sea. That's the One Belt, One Road thing. So the AIIB is not unconnected to this big project. Now, this China is very much concerned, and Ambassador Chito Romana has gotten later that need to be more expansive on this issue of the Chinese motive. It's very important to really know what's behind, because once we engage China in the AIIB, clearly China is the majority stockholder, managing the bank in the same way that AIB is managing the Japanese and the world banks and the Americans. Very important that we have to consider the total picture, the geopolitical picture, the geoeconomic picture, as we line up to get a share of the bounties that they offer. I mean, let's be realistic about that. I'm not talking about surrendering sovereignty. Certainly, when we were in China, we said we will not ever give up our claim. And they said yes, and we will never ever give up our historic claim to our field. So why don't we just sit down and try to share whatever the bounties of the what we call the West Philippine Sea and what we call the South China Sea. And the development of all of these things will be underwritten by all the institutions in the area and outside of the area, and I think principally the Asian Infrastructure and Development Bank. As we speak, many countries, our neighboring countries, have already availed of the bank's facilities. I have a list here of countries and projects. We have Myanmar in energy, we have Kazakhstan in transport, Pakistan in energy, India in energy, Pakistan again in transport, Bangladesh in energy, Pakistan in transport, Indonesia. So as we continue to debate in the Senate whether or not to avail of this facility, our neighbors are already making hay with all the sun shining. So again, I plead with our people to try to fast track this operation. Now, I think about 4 or 5 billion is in the pipeline every year for lending, and the line is getting longer. So, if we are not very decisive about it, we will be at the back of 57 countries, how many countries there are. Now, I can understand that there is pressure to send in from the United States and Japan that we do not participate in the thing. But I'm very grateful that the Senate will uphold the independent foreign policy of this administration and will go and ratify this thing. Actually, as Lee said, it is better to sit on a stool with 3 legs than a stool with 2 legs. So, the more legs there are in the stool, the better for us to access. Now, there is the gap in infrastructure in Asia, which many estimate have seen something like 10 trillion in the next 10 years. And certainly, if we look at the infrastructure gap in the Philippines, we're talking about 1 trillion, maybe a couple of trillion. So all of this will not be accommodated by the additional financing facilities. You know, the World Bank is pretty much engaged now. After they have wrecked the Middle East, I don't know, say they wrecked the Middle East, but Middle East is great. I think there will be a lot of reconstruction and rehabilitation that we have to go into that. And I'm sure that the United States and the Western powers are morally obligated to rehabilitate that devastated region in the country, to at least less to the pipeline for this part of the world. Okay? Now, ADB has got its hands full. So, with ADB and AAB, we're better off in terms of accessing the funds. There is concern about do you have a question? There is clearly there is a concern on the part of people about the ecology and the environmental impact of this loan because, well, if you look at the Chinese development paradigm, actually, they haven't been very careful about the environment, that's for sure. So this has been a concern of the ADB and the World Bank, that they will not follow the same sort of lackadaisical approach to development that they have in the foreign country. So to offset this and to prevent the two big powers blocking this, I think they have gone a long ways to see to it that the project that they will finance in the future will be environmentally and ecologically safe. At least from what I can see from the protocol that they have written out. There are three items here that I think they have lined up for the region, continent, energy, roads, communications, and three items. And as far as this is concerned, we're talking about roads. When we talk with trains or roads, there's a lot of displacement of people. That is the problem that we cannot actually complete our program to the north and south rails. Because we have displaced so many people in Bulacan, Pampanga, and so forth. So, and I am happy that it's noted here in the protocols that whenever they embark on this type of a project, they have to see to it first and foremost that the displaced person will be properly attended to for the project. And that will also go with, it's not only the train, but also the road building. When you come up to the road, especially since areas here that are very densely populated, that is a big problem for us. And well, I've seen that all over the place. Yeah, so we have to be careful about that. When you go into hydro project, which is the energy aspect, a lot of environmental damage can cause wildfires. Again, we have to be very careful about these projects. So what else is there to say? Apparently the breakdown in 2010 to 2020 will be 50% for electricity, 30% for roads, and then the rest of it telecommunications. So there you are. For our part, there is money. The problem in this country is not money. We were never short of funding. The World Bank, MDP, and it's our absorptive capacity. So this has got to be addressed. And by absorptive capacity, is the readiness of the countryside. I'm talking here LGU, talking here, like I said, Mindanao, Lano, Province, Government, there's a lot of work involved in even presenting the feasibility studies. And I'm glad that one of the things that goes with the funding from AIOB, from what I can see from the protocol, is as mentioned earlier, the speaker is more or less free feasibility study. This is very expensive, and I think it's very important because we cannot afford some big project studies. Well, I'm just actually the comment on your talk, so I think I'll end there and I'll take any questions from now.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you. you, Ambassador Romero. That was very insightful. That you also provide the background on the geopolitics as well as the foreign relations side of it. Of course, as NGOs and CSOs, ours is in the social as well as the environmental aspects. But you can also see where each one of us are coming from, because as Attorney Margarita was pointing more, how the government is more trying to find out where to get the money or the budget to be able to pay our share. But you see, it's not just the share. It should also be the voting power. Because you can see that China has the biggest contribution, so it has the biggest say and voting power in the whole of AIIB. Now, it's
This is a very important point, because this is something that I'd like to share with you. And I'm going again to the geopolitical aspect. The World Bank is more or less controlled by the United States. And the United States has not been very shy in trying to influence policies of the World Bank. And I saw this clearly when there was a regime change in this country in 1986. At that time, it was very clear that Washington was unhappy with the developments in the country. I was going back and forth at that time, Washington, I could listen to all of the goings on in the corridors of the State Department and so on. Because one of my classmates was head of the Philippine desk. So I had an earful of what they were planning. And since the World Bank in 8th Street, 14th Street, just across the White House, there's a lot of dialogue going on. Now you imagine that in the first shock, external shock, was the OPEC in 1970s. We could handle that, but we had enough reserve. The next biggest external shock was in the 80s, second OPEC thing. And by that time, the country got involved in constructive development. The edifice complex, we call it, of amendment, that's all over. We have a problem of debt structure at that time. Our short-term loans were more than half. So, external shock, that's when World Bank came in with a structural adjustment loan. That did it. They insisted on opening the economy, depreciating the peso, and buying on that. The rest is history. Okay. Now, I said this because I am concerned, I am as concerned as you are about the power sharing. We do not want China to do that negative, and maybe the solution is probably in the grouping. We can, I see a chop there. We have Indonesia in different things. When I was in the United Nations, I was executive director of a bunch of countries, which merely was the ASEAN group, and we had a bigger say. So if the ASEAN, even plus, can really consolidate. And maybe this is something that the Philippines should insist, or not insist, I mean, not in but suggest, since we are going to be the ASEAN chair next year, what you can still amend this voting rights. So I think I'd like to associate myself with your concern.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Now, we'd like to open the floor. We're starting the first part of our round table now, or rather a square table right now. And then we will hear later on the second part will be with Ambassador Chito Santa Romana. Yes, Gani.
My concern for Marx and Ambassador Romero has to do with the green card. The lane clean and green. Since, well, we can accept that as theoretically green at this point. And what I want to know from you, to the extent that you know already what's in the AIIB in terms of safeguards. Knowing that World Bank and Asian Development Bank have already advanced in terms of environmental safeguards, relative to the other banks. Where is the AIIB at this point in terms of environmental safeguards? And considering, given only as a theoretical assurance, considering that we are here talking about a bank that vows to focus on infrastructure and not mind other things beside. So focus on infrastructure, which in the bank ADB language has been left by the bank already as early as 1994. When in 1994, the Asian Development Bank said that we are no longer an infrastructure bank, so we are moving to the soft sector. That was the shift. And now they are coming back to the infra. And having this kind of competitor, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, so you could see the drive, the motivation for the Asian Development Bank to compete along that particular line that the AIIB has chosen to concentrate on, which is infrastructure. Now, I'd like to know that because it is a bank that will invest in linking 3 continents, the so-called heartland of Asia, Europe, and Africa, to be connected by infrastructure. You could imagine the carbon footprint of that kind of connection. I'd like to see in the safeguards of AIIB the safeguards against rising carbon footprint, which will be a necessary consequence of this kind of focus. So, is there something already in place, or at least being developed by way of safeguards that will give us some confidence that this is something we can plan on? I'm for, between of course the Bretton Woods institution that we have engaged for the longest time, and new banks such as this one. You could imagine that there is a bit of hesitation on our part to deal with the AIIB, although that for me personally is a welcome thing.
Attorney, would you like to reply to that?
I think one of the problems right now is we only have very few documents on AIB to begin with. So if you look at the Articles of Agreement, there's a clear provision on
the bank should use policies and should enhance. So I'll just look into the exact text so we don't. It says that it has to consider the social and environmental impacts of all the projects that will be funding. So right now, what we have from AIIB is during the meetings on September 2015, they released the environmental and social framework that should guide all borrowing funds, all borrowing entities. I understand some CSOs have expressed concerns about the contents of this framework, and what's good is there's an ongoing process. I'm not sure how AIIB has acted upon the concerns submitted to them, but I understand that they come up with progress reports every time the chief negotiators come together to meet. So these meetings occur at least once a year. So what I suggest is for the CSOs to continue to be vigilant and look into how the members of how the chief negotiators come up and address all the issues that are raised to them. So I think what's the problem right now is AIIB is a relatively new institution. So it's hard to take them to the task yet because there are very few projects pa lang eh. So let's give them a chance, but be vigilant of how they will deal with all these criticisms in future projects.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a heretic when it comes to environment. You know why? Because maraming hypocrites. The biggest, I think, is the United States and China. They're the biggest contributor to the ocean trade. U.S. contributed by half, I think, in the problems, with the oil of these motor cars, etc. And China the same thing. And has the U.S. signed the Kyoto Agreement already? They have signed the Kyoto Agreement? You have They haven't signed the Kyoto. So there you are.
The Paris Agreement.
They have signed, but not the. Yeah. They didn't sign the UNCLOS, another one to get control of the whole situation. I'm a little bit sympathetic with the government when we say, I should sign the Paris Agreement. We're going to be so much of the, whatever that ozone layer thing, And, as an economist, I can tell you that it's very difficult for us, really, to be able to manufacture, to industrialize. If we have to be more focused on the coal, because clearly we need coal. If you want to be competitive, locally competitive with other countries, we need a certain amount of coal in your thing. And I will insist that the manufacturing thing will be a mix, and I think that is the policy of the energy thing. Anyway. And China is the biggest contributor to this business. I mean, when I was in Beijing, you cannot see the sky. I mean, it's just so, it's so funny. So I mean, there is a price to pay. But I do agree. We can expect the heavy lifting to be done by the bank. the heavy lifting should be done by the countries concerned. But it's important, I agree that in the protocols that we have to be careful that we minimize at least the impact on the environment on the kind of lending for infrastructure that we have in mind.
Okay, thank you very much, Masra. Professor Tazan, yeah.
First of all, breaking news. I just learned that Senator Risa Ontiveros is going to oppose the ratification of Aiib in the Senate. Yes. And that she's going to call for a review of the membership and relationship of the Philippines with all existing IFIs, including the World Bank, Aiib and all that, in order to draw lessons from it before becoming a member of another IFI. So if Senator Ontiveros is opposing it, we can assume that the other allies in the Senate, Rilon, De Lima, Lamakino, and Chito we might also go along and oppose it. But then there's still 5 votes will still not be enough to overturn the Senate needs 2/3, 16 votes. But this is interesting because if Risa is going to call for a review of membership and relationship with existing IFIs, that's going to take a long time to review our relationships with the World Bank and IMF and ADB as well. Anyway, it is getting to be interesting. I understand there's pressures now being, senators are now being pressured to immediately sign the ratification protocols. Okay. The next thing I'd like to say is that with regards to AIIB, one must understand what motivates China to undertake such a project as AIIB, as well as the One Belt, One Road projects. Two are actually related. Romero has already described to us what the One Belt, One Road entails in terms of massive building construction, infrastructure in more than half of the world. But China's motivation is a typical capitalist measure, actually, in order to stem a crisis, an economic crisis that is, if not already in place, is brewing in China. And that is the crisis of overcapacity and overproduction. China has been in a drive to become the world's leading economic power, has been producing and overproducing, particularly steel as well as cement. So there's so much steel and cement that China has to upload on the world market. The best way to do it is, to build, go into large-scale infrastructure projects, roads, bridges, railways, ports, which require a lot of steel and cement. So that way, China will be able to partly solve its problem of overcapacity. So that's the main thing, I think, that one should consider here in terms of why China is doing this. China is acting like a typical capitalist country that has produced so much that it can no longer absorb this overcapacity in its own country. It has already built so much infrastructure within China that you now have the phenomenon of ghost cities in China, where no people, no investors, no industries, all you have are buildings, empty roads, and other types of infrastructure. And this is becoming a problem for China, which has already been alluded to. And even even if, for example, the AIIB is saying that they engaged in co-financing with the World Bank and also with the ADB, the fact is the U.S. is not part of the AIIB, and the U.S. government actually was a bit disappointed that almost all of their allies have already joined the AIIB. Okay. Perhaps the third thing I'd like to point out is the dangers of sovereign bank loans. As Marx has pointed out, this is going to be one of the features of the AIIB loans, that they have to be guaranteed by the Philippine government. And we have had experiences with sovereign bank loans, especially MRT and many others, where the Philippine government will be saddled with taking over the debts from the private sector, which could be a big drain on our budget. The implication of this is that we would have less funds for social protection and other human development projects. I guess that's it for now.
Sir, do you want to take 2 more questions from the floor?
Yeah.
So, hello everyone, I am from Margarita Alias. So, my question is related to the first 2 questions that were asked earlier. But, Mark, I'd like to take on what Professor Cayetano said about private sector, because we have yet again leveraged public finance for private sector development. So, from there, China and India, to a lesser extent, have been heavily criticized for appalling human rights violations and records of some of their partner countries. So CSOs have also raised their concerns about the working conditions of workers and non-compliance with environmental and safety regulations. So my first question is, what are the relevant monitoring frameworks and tools that are currently in place right now to ensure that the rights of the communities as well as the protection of the environment are secured? It was answered a bit earlier that we must give them a chance, yes, but we must not give them the chance. We must ask these questions right now before entering into such agreement. So yeah, that's what's bothering me. Second question is, how does the ADB ensure democratic ownership of communities with regard to these investment projects? So if it does not consult or does not engage with civil society organizations and other groups in policy activities.
No, it's just that on the note that yes, let's give AIIB a chance. It's just that we already know ADB, World Bank, that there are really projects that adversely impact people, adversely impact the environment. And there are still not a lot of documents defining the strategy of AIIB. Then I guess it's also an opportunity for the Philippines, if it's ratifying the AIIB, to push such measures, to ensure that safeguards would really be adopted, stricter safeguards than those that are currently being used by ADB perhaps and World Bank, because we already know, we already have experiences showing the adverse impacts of this project. But at the same time, I would also like to disagree in a bit with the statement about the coal. The problem, sir, with I think, well, all of our partners here in the Philippines and in Indonesia are working on the issue of coal. A lot of them are working on it, so working with communities that are really adversely impacted by coal. So if we're going to weigh and check whether use coal because we argue on the side of we have a right to development. They develop, they use coal. But the point is we're one of the most vulnerable countries. How do we balance this out? We argue that we will pursue this use coal because we have a right to development. And then we become more vulnerable as well because now we're contributing to the emissions. That's really punishing a lot of Filipinos, putting our lives in danger, putting our country in danger. So, but I do get your point that I hope we could push the US and China to commit to the second KP, Kyoto Protocol, because there was also a new report saying that if we don't do something now, from this point up to 2020, because the Paris Agreement would only come into force by 2020, so we still have 4 years. We're talking of 4 years. We're not going to do anything, and this is the period for the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol. We don't do anything. Even if we do something by 2020, we will not be able to reach even the 2%. So this is the time also as well that I hope the President would, give this nuanced statement that of course we have a right to development, but we will do it not in the way that they did it, that they emitted, because we are the victims of that. The second one is to really push these emitters to stop emitting because we're suffering because of them. And if your group, you describe your group as, I think, very influential people, retired generals, retired ambassadors, I think if you could exert such influence, if I hope you could reconsider your point about coal, perhaps you can work with a lot of CSOs, also working towards the development of the country, but not in a dirty way that coal would do.
Okay. So far what we are hearing is really based on experience that there are social and environmental concerns. Sir, would you like to
Hello. The hardest subject that I did during my economic studies was the economics of welfare. This is really a killer. When you do a cost-benefit analysis, you have to take the whole thing. You have to balance welfare. I was manager of the Apple Cement in Cebu using coal because there's nothing else you can use. They talk about this, the new thing we have the networks every day. We have the most developed, I think, solar the networks today. And that's good. Because we have alternatives there. But still expensive. And what are the hydro? Actually, hydros is cheapest. You know that. But it also has creates a lot of power. You know, remember in Chito, that and everything else, they created a lot of new people's army volunteers because of that. So, and then, so what we're trying to do is come up with really, we have to measure welfare. And that's what we're trying to do. Numbers. Who gets hit, who benefits. Cost-benefit analysis. From a distance, you know, it looks so easy. But when you look at I'm looking at Naga Cement, I'm looking at all of the houses that we're building there, all the things coming from our cement production. And so things, are we going to have this or not at all? This is a difficult choice to make. Not at all. We have created the whole community of Naga in Cebu. About 5,000 families are fine. And, so All I can say is that it's not that easy to think. Everything, what is the optimum thing? What's the optimum compromise? You know? That's got to be very it has to be quantitative. It's not only intuitive, it's not only emotional, it's got to be intuitive. And I think that's the task before us to see to that thing. That's all I can say about the thing. But I'd like to take on, there are two other topics which are important. And I think the gentleman, I forget the name, well, anyway, the thing about sovereign guarantees. I'm giving a lecture on the 22nd next week about federalism. And I am suggesting, with all due respect to this administration, that we have fiscal federalism rather than political federalism. I think it's more doable. In other words, just give, in a nutshell, give the era, give that to the local government. We will solve the problem. Now, because what I discovered is that you have the Aiib, you have federal states. Under the laws of the federal states, they can borrow from abroad. And in Argentina and Brazil, the government nearly disappeared because these states had overborrowed. Because we had the internal line, they were borrowing galore. And the central government could not check because they were federal states. So that's something that is a big concern that we have to think. And then finally, we have to help the AIIB. They cannot do all the heavy lifting. If we're going to prevent all of these problems that we have today, the most dramatic is the EDSA problem. Okay? If we're going to borrow from the AIIB and create another EDSA, it could easily happen. Now, let me just tell you, what is EDSA? What is the EDSA traffic problem in Manila? Very simple. 4 families own all the land from Naiya to Quezon City. 4 families. Ayala, from Naiya to Guadalupe. Ortigas, from Guadalupe to Araneta. Pitwasan, and Madrigal. These 4 families took over this swath of land and then had a toothpaste tube from north to south. That's the other side. But just imagine a situation where you say, okay, here is money for another EDSA. But the local government won't do anything about it because they're under the control of the landowners, like we have. You will create the problem that you're trying to control. So the point is, if the problem has to be solved at the roots and not give everything to the lender. The borrower must have to do it somewhere.
You see the importance of the country borrower's role also. I'd like to open the floor to the others who would have any questions. Oh, yes, sir.
Good afternoon, my name is Dennis De La Torre. I used to be with the Climate Change Commission and the Research and Policy Development. Now I'm with the National College of Public Administration and Governance, working on climate change, of course. first regarding the coal issue. The rest of the world is going to a clean development pathway, while internally we need to take a look at the issue of coal in relation to development. But if we stop at that, we look at coal from the point of view of fueling our development literally, and we don't extend it further to whether we will transition from coal and other great resources of fuel to a cleaner pathway. That's the policy issue. So we cannot just say, okay, we still need coal to fuel our development without considering the end stage, when the rest of the world is trying to grapple with a cleaner development pathway in relation to targeting climate change mitigation and reducing emissions. Because we need to maintain the target now is 2 degrees centigrade. Well, 1.5 for the developing countries, but there's a debate there. So it's the 2 degrees centigrade threshold. But with that introduction, let me now shift, because I've come across certain documents that Aiib Act is actually in relation to its thrust of focusing on infrastructure. It uses the word resilient development, because about 3 years ago, I first came across this debate in Aiib regarding renaming, because it's climate change mitigation versus climate change adaptation. There are debates internally that it should now be resilient development, but looking at documents right now, the resilient development is a thrust to focus on climate change mitigation. So if you take a look at the discussion, especially the paper, they're all about investment in power, infrastructure, etc. So the climate change adaptation is being left behind. I don't know if this is a conscious strategic action on the part of multilateral agencies now, including AIIB. Because if that's the case, then the case should be made that it's the task of people in the Philippines who are into this strategic action or strategic push to bring back climate change adaptation, and are actually particularly to push for climate and disaster risk financing. Because otherwise, if this will be the global strategic thrust, including AIIB, vulnerable countries like the Philippines will always have to keep on pushing for climate and disaster risk financing, because it's not in the strategic documents. So there should be a push for climate and disaster risk financing in all strategic documents, not just in AIIB. Otherwise, it will push off the financing by, and it will focus on climate change mitigation in the guise of resilient development, because resiliency is being used, I feel, to crowd off climate and disaster financing and make it focus on climate change mitigation. Thank you.
Would you like to have
sharing my insight on a couple of questions. I wanted to share about how to look at the end that our colleagues from here and NPC already talked on that matter. I would like to just share a bit on the implication of the AIB, what it means. From a political standpoint, AIB, the creation of AIB is a challenge to the traditional MDBs, multilateral development banks, and economic powers. It is a statement, well, we've had this in the past, but now it's more pronounced, that we no longer have a one country hegemony. So ours is a world where there are many hegemonic powers backing over finance, markets, etc. And it is also an assertion of the economic influence of China. Given that there is already a shift in this balance of powers of play, you have China coming into play, saying it's our time, it's our turn. Consideration of the historical antecedents. There's this TV series, Marco Polo. If you've seen that, you'd actually be hearing about Silk Road. And the Silk Road is your one belt, one road. And here you have, that time, that was the time of Genghis Khan, ruling over China. Now you have new Genghis Khan in the context of the 21st century, and that is Aiib. As if to assert its historical antecedent. And this also comes at a time of a post-2008 world, where we experience global economic, how do you call it, the recession naman tawag na. And in the US, worse, in fact, they said it was the lowest point in many years, worst event to some degree compared to the Great Depression. So it is China learning from that experience. From that experience, you have this infrastructure back because of overcapacity. Now, what used to be a market for tradable goods coming from China, that market is now asserting its own influence by extorting finance and infiltrating investment markets. So what are the issues here? I've identified some, although these were already raised in some forums. It may be a misnomer to say it's just an infrastructure bank, but policy-wise, and this is something that we should look into, what is the implication in terms of possible structural adjustment programs? Would this entail strings being attached? Would this entail reforms on the part of the lending country or the borrowing country? And then that AIB is supposedly there to spur economic activities. That's why it's investing in infrastructure. From that very motivation to be able to help local economies or domestic economies to go about its own activities. But we should ask, at what cost? What cost should this economic activities being undertaken? And this was already asked by Dr. Today, what are the standards? What are the guiding standards? What are the, in the language of the, for example, what is AIB's own accountable mechanism? Since we know for a fact that MDBs are not accountable to one country, it is accountable to all. But even under their own accountability mechanisms, investigation mechanism and whatnot, they are not accountable as how we want them to be accountable. So how then can we make sure that the AIB is accountable? And looking at it from the point of view of Filipino, what is the interest of the Philippines? What is at stake for the Philippines? But these are just some of the issues, not really the questions here. The questions to the speakers are as follows. From your own understanding, from what economic development framework does the AIIB proceed? Is this a deviation, a divergence from the Bretton Woods framework that was mentioned earlier? Or is this a cut in the loop? China wanting its share in the cake, or not a division at all. Second, if you look at AIIB from the perspective of value added, what is the value added of AIIB in a world where we have to contend with realities such as hunger, poverty, even climate change? Or is there value added at all? Third, we've been mentioning, this is where I digress to tackle the 1.5 aspirational target. Under the Paris Agreement, it's actually 1.5, not 2 degrees. 2 degrees, not beyond 2 degrees. And it is now operational. given that there is this Paris Agreement and given that there is a growing consensus that further investment in fossil fuels would ultimately mean stranded costs for investors in the long run because of the transition to renewable energy alternatives. How then can we guarantee that this is not what Aiib has in mind, blocking us in stranded costs because of this investment in quote-unquote modern energy? Modern energy, which includes coal, oil, and natural gas. And lastly, from the perspective of the Filipino, what is AAIB in relation to the automatic appropriations law? So, as a member of Freedom from that coalition, you have a law which automatically enjoins the national government by allocating and appropriating funds directly for debt servicing. How then would that translate to spur economic activities for the Philippines when you have practically hostage a part of the budget supposedly for social investment or social infrastructure investment? So
Sure. Will you be able to answer the question? I think there are three you raised. One is how different is AIIB from the concept of the Bretton Woods. Second is the value added in relation to how will it really contribute to the economic development. And the third is the fifth. Yeah. Pardon? That appropriation act, wherein part of our budget is going into the debt servicing, right? Attorney, would you like to answer one of those questions? One more question.
My question may sound stupid. The question, if we don't join, what will happen to the Philippines? Looks like about one never got studies should join also. If we know what will be the effect, how much would be the diplomatic relationship effect of that joining and joining?
Very simple question. What if we don't join? What will happen to us? Ambassador?
Well, in the spirit of having this particular event, it was to get diverse views of civil society across the table through government. So you're relatively aware of what are the major concerns which are coming from the people. Now, when I woke up this morning, I told myself I will not have the microphone. It's a national discussion between the people and their government. Me being a foreigner, I should not keep on talking about issues. But I'll take liberty because I was born in Laguna, Los Baños, so technically I'm half Filipino. So in that sense, our concern is really looking into the environmental social framework itself. And we're noticing that if projects are considered as medium risk, which is category B, the policy states that environmental social management plans can be submitted by the government to acquire the loan. That means a robust environmental impact assessment may not be necessary for a medium risk project, which basically means the government can submit a promissory note that upon receiving the loan, we are going to set up an environmental social framework, which may not necessarily curtail or mitigate all the problems which may happen in implementation. In the APB, this is not the case. In the APB safeguards policy, for medium risk projects, you also have independent environmental examination.
So with the AIIB, we realize that there's a certain amount of flexibility. This makes, I think it's a part of the lean angle, that it reduces the paperwork, but in reducing the paperwork, we are concerned we might be losing out on the rights of the people. The second thing which I'm going to talk about in terms of the ideas and concern, which I want to flag with the government as well, is this is a real operational practice, because this is 2016, this is the first year of the bank in operation. In operation with the 6 projects which are already out, project information is not released in a public domain. We have not received any reports in the AIIB website on environmental impact assessments or what are the details of the project, which highway is going to be built where in detail. So the project tends to move forward before the information gets released. So when it comes down to whether the projects are going to implement policies or not, we're already in the dark. And the headquarters being in Beijing and being very opaque to civil society, there's hardly much space to even call on it. So one of the concerns in the future, I believe, is Philippines ratifies AIIB and projects start rolling on the ground. There will be a real need for civil society in the Philippines to talk to the different government officials engaged in AIIB and raise clear concerns about situations on the ground. Because there's hardly any space in the institutional mechanism at this point. Will things change for the better? We can hope so, but right now being vigilant and bracing ourselves is probably the best move forward. Nothing more from me.
So, thank you, Ryan. So that means that what we're raising here in this venue is to be able to allow, especially those who would be able to influence our Senate and our policymakers. What are the general concerns that we have here? It's not all because it's coming from the air, but we really come from our experience, which are needed. At this point, we would like to have a break. We'll have a break, and we'll have our second round of table discussion, because Ambassador Chito Romana will be arriving and joining us for the second session. Okay? Yeah. 15? In 15 minutes, shall we say? Let's have some tea break, nicotine break, whatever. Now we would like to welcome Ambassador Chito Romana, who is our ambassador to China. And he will be talking more at designate. Okay, designate ambassador to China. And then we will continue with our roundtable discussion.
Let's start. It's also going to be, I'll start with President Duterte in China and the results of the visit, as well as the prospects for Philippines-China relations. And then I'll go on the latter part about AIIB, kasi I suppose Senator Cayetano staff briefed you that they're going to go full force for ratification. I may cover some for material. I hope it's not doubling up, pero let's proceed. How can I? Okay, this is good. So, this is the Hong Kong talks of last August, the Ramos mission in Hong Kong. This actually laid the foundation. This was the icebreaker mission which laid the foundation for the summit meeting between President Duterte and Xi Jinping. Yeah. Okay, so basically the summit meeting was the result of a foreign policy shift by the Philippine government. From the previous position of aligning with the US against China to the current position of seeking better political and economic ties with China, but not including forming a military alliance with China. Basically, the current approach is what's probably, you may have heard it from others. It's usually a term used by students and scholars of international politics. We're basically, what the government is basically employing, although it doesn't use the term, is a hedging strategy. Yeah, I mean, it makes common sense that you don't put your eggs in one basket, the US basket. Neither do you put it in the Chinese basket. So you basically hedge your bets between US and China in order to maximize the gains for the Philippines and to increase the space for tactical and strategic maneuver. So the current president's China policy is different from the previous one in the sense that the focus and the key driver of Philippines-China relations now will be economic cooperation. In other words, this is like the Philippine version of economics in command. The disputes will not disappear overnight, but there will be direct talks to peacefully resolve them. But the disputes will not be an obstacle to the development of bilateral ties. So the basic approach is it's based on the concept of compartmentalization or the linking, not decoupling. You delink the contentious issues from the non-contentious one. You separate them, compartmentalize them, so that the disputes will not spill over to the other spheres, and it will not be at the front and center of the bilateral relations. So you can proceed with engagement on non-contentious issues, economics, finance, culture, education, and sports. And then as for the contentious issues in the disputes, they can be discussed one by one through quiet diplomacy and combined with high-level diplomacy. So that is how we will proceed in the coming years. Now, one thing that has happened is it's basically a change in the strategic calculation of the Chinese towards the Philippines. That is based on a change in the perception of the Chinese leadership, as well as the Philippine leadership, and the Chinese media and the Philippine media towards each other. From the Philippine point of view, a change from the view that China is a national security threat to one that views China as an economic partner in development. From the Chinese point of view, the change from viewing the Philippines as a geopolitical pawn of the US or a Trojan horse of the containment policy against China to the view that now the Philippines is a friendly neighbor that is acting independently of US foreign policy towards China. And the interest of the Philippines in China is really based on the Chinese economic situation. China is the world's biggest holder of foreign exchange reserves, 3.17 trillion, and also the world's biggest holder of US Treasury bonds, 1.2 trillion. It's declining compared to a year ago, but it's still significant. Nevertheless, the Chinese face mounting economic challenges. The challenge of economic slowdown, since they were used to a double-digit economic growth in the past. And they have this problem right now of the credit expansion that's too rapid and the risk of a real estate bubble, as well as the overcapacity and overproduction in their industry. That's why you have the phenomenon of dumping cases being filed against China, particularly with steel products and other products in the West. So, from the president's visit to China, basically the perspective is how to transform diplomacy into one that serves the public, people's interests, and to transform it into one that converts it into tangible gains for the people. Here, there were MOUs and MOAs signed amounting to $24 billion, consisting of $15 billion in investment projects and $9 billion in loans. So it's estimated that about 2 million jobs will be generated by these projects over the next 5 years. Of course, we have to proceed with Philippine-China relations with caution and with eyes wide open because of the lessons from the past. The scandal from the North Korea project, the joint maritime seismic undertaking, and the MDNCP scandal of the past. All because of the lack of due diligence, transparency, the lack of bidding process, basically the violations of the government procurement rules. And of course, an awareness that when it comes to joint exploration, there are constitutional requirements or limits that the Philippine side will have to abide by. The provisions of national patrimony and 60%, 40% investment requirement under the Constitution. So, broadly speaking, the challenges ahead as we proceed in the coming months and years is how to carry out the economic cooperation with China on mutually beneficial terms and how to avoid the mistakes of the past. When it comes to the disputes, it's how to conduct negotiations without giving up on the sovereignty claim. And broadly speaking, it's how to avoid economic dependence on either China or the US. Now, one result of the visit, of course, is the Philippines will now before the end of the year, will ratify the articles of membership for AIIB. As I explained in the talk last year, AIIB is really is really a component of Chinese foreign policy, in the sense that it represents China's foreign policy approach. It's the use, and this is under the rubric of the One Belt, One Road, the economic belt and the maritime Silk Road, or if you read Chinese material, as you keep seeing the OBOR, and you'll see it in the coming months. Because I think the Chinese want the president to attend a major OBOR summit next year, but I think they're still working on the details. So the basic Chinese approach is how they can leverage their economic resources to expand their international economic and political influence. Some would compare it to a response to the US people to Asia, because some Chinese scholars compare it to the pivot is an encirclement from the Pacific. So the Silk Road, or rather the OBOR, is an attempt to go westward, not eastward. Westward, towards Europe, towards Central Asia, and towards Europe. Although it has two components. One is the overland, and the other one is the maritime Silk Road. But let's look at, I don't know if this should probably cover this. What AIIB has done during its first year. So it was really founded around Christmas time, or this year actually, January. And the target for this year is to have a loan portfolio of about $1.2 billion. So far, they've already approved $829 million in loans to 6 projects in Pakistan, Tajikistan, Indonesia, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. According to the AIIB president, the bank is basically on target to meet their target. It's essentially on track to meet their targets for this year. Now let's look at the loans AIIB has given so far. $165 million to a power distribution project in Bangladesh, $200+ million to Indonesia. It's a slum improvement project in Indonesia, co-financed by the World Bank. And then $100 million loan to a highway project in Pakistan, co-financed by ADB and the British Department for International Development. And then there is a 27.5 million loan to a border road project in Tajikistan, this time co-financed by the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. A 300 million loan to a hydropower project in Pakistan, co-financed by the World Bank. And a 20 million loan to a power plant in Myanmar that will possibly have additional funding from the International Finance Corporation of 58 million, and the ADB will contribute 42 million. So, if you look at it, go back 2 slides. The only project that is solely funded by AIB is the one to Bangladesh. The others, it's really together with World Bank, with ADB, with UK Department for International Development, with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, World Bank again, and IFC, which is an arm of the World Bank for the private sector, and the ADB. Essentially, the approach of the AIIB has been very cautious, and we'll discuss it later on. They really bought into the project that the World Bank and ADB have already started, and part of this is to gain credibility and to ease the suspicion of the West about AIIB and its intentions. But if you look at it from the point of view of OBOR, the One Road, One Belt, One Road, the China's strategic initiative, the Silk Road strategy, they all fall under the sphere or within the vision. I mean, it makes sense because most of the members of AIIB are also covered by the OBOR strategy. So that's why Pakistan is the main beneficiary, 400 billion. The Silk Road Economic Belt, that's really Tajikistan. And then Bangladesh, Myanmar, part of what is called the Bangladesh, China, India, Myanmar Economic Corridor, they get 185 million. And Indonesia is really the one that is part of the maritime Silk Road. And eventually, the Philippines, we fall under the maritime Silk Road. So that's where we go now to what the Philippines plans to propose. The Philippines, after submitting the formal ratification and after its membership is ratified, they're already considering 2 projects. One is the bus rapid transit along Quezon Avenue in España. The other one is a flood control project for Metro Manila. Both of these projects, I think, has been approved, is in the pipeline of NEDA. And so, this is the first 2 projects they want to submit. So this probably will have a high probability of approval in the next year or so. Now, AIIB and ADB have actually identified areas of cooperation and co-financing when it comes to projects related to transport, water, urban development, and renewable energy. And AIIB also is reaching out to the private sector. So the private sector may access AIIB financing for public-private partnership projects. And this is AIIB is already active in PPP financing in Indonesia, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. Now, when it comes to the World Bank, we've seen already that they have this joint co-financing or cooperation with the Indonesian project. It's a 1.74 billion project that consists of improving the slum areas in 154 cities in Indonesia, improving it by developing urban infrastructure, there's a typo, to develop urban infrastructure and services in 154 cities in Indonesia. So, this project, AIIB is contributing 216.5 million for the project. And this is the first project of Aiib in Indonesia, and that is part of the Maritime Silk Road. So here we go back. We look at the big picture. Originally, Aiib was viewed, particularly in the West, as a bank that will be an instrument of Chinese policy, like a Chinese-controlled bank that is meant to rival the World Bank and the ADB. So the whole argument that China was going to be a revisionist power and setting up an alternative system was very much because of this suspicion. Now, what Aiib has done has been to cooperate with World Bank and the ADB. So now it is being viewed as part of the global financial system rather than an attempt to create a new one. Eventually, there may still be variation, but for now, the Chinese, I think, they want to be considered as not yet a revisionist power, or not a revisionist power at this stage. Which brings us back to the whole strategy of the Silk Road strategy of China. Basically, it's an economic, there's a strategic goals, of course, but it's really using its economic resources. So what is happening is that while the US has military superiority, China is using at least its superiority, what it has in the US in terms of treasury bonds, slowly out of it to other projects, and most of them fall under the rubric of the one belt, one road. So here actually, I think as you will see that the Chinese on the one hand is posing a challenge, but on the other hand is not ready to meet the US frontally, but rather is trying to find areas where it can expand its influence with the use of where it has an advantage, and mainly economic resources. So the ultimate question down the road is which power will have the ability to sustain its economic growth. The US, as you know, the trajectory is on the decline. And with Trump's election, there's a whole issue here. Canada has just joined, and now the top advisor of Trump is saying that it was a strategic mistake of the Obama administration not to join. So will Trump join the Chinese? This will be the ultimate eating of humble pie on the part of the US. But let's see. There are some indications they might. Japan may be the last holdover. It will take a while. It will take a while. But with Trump, the TPP basically is there now. And so with Trump, the question is, which Trump will come out in the coming months? The Trump that preached isolationism, America first, America withdrawing to the mainland, and the protectionism of Trump, bring back the jobs, impose tax on Chinese product, or will it be the Trump, the businessman that wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, and will he just cut a deal so that he can, as he will find out, if he will impose a tax on all Chinese products, he could start a trade war, and it won't just be China that will be hurt. All of us, including the U.S. workers and the U.S. people, the American people. So, that is one aspect of the problem. Of course, from the point of view of Asia, what will happen to the people? Will it go the way of the TPP? Or will it go the way of two of his advisors, now the right-wing advisors of Trump? They're advocating what they call peace through strength. Actually advocating that they strengthen the Navy, maintain the presence in Asia, and basically continue some form, the pivot and the because it is really in East Asia that the clash of strategic interest between the US and China is focused and is concentrated. So we will see what will happen in the next few months. On that note, thank you for your interest, and we can continue our roundtable discussion.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's good that you put it in a bigger context of sometimes they call it the BRI, Belt Road Initiative. And what is important here is that it has 6 corridors that it's targeting to open up. And then it will not only involve AIIB, but it already has the Silk Road Fund, and it will involve more banks, Exim Bank of China and all these other commercial banks to finance it. So it's a big initiative of China. Okay, having said that, I think we're open to the floor now for any questions, any insights, any comments.
Just an observation from NGO Forum on Aiib. Just coming back from the BRICS summit, we realized, which was in Goa about a month back, and there was a parallel civil society forum called the People's Forum on BRICS. So while the BRICS was happening, everybody was worried about the India-Pakistan tensions. And I was speaking to Ambassador Romero earlier today about this, that for the BRICS to sort of keep India and Pakistan from firing up on a full-on war, it would require Russia and China to play some soft diplomacy dialogue with India to ensure that the One Belt One Road initiative smoothly goes through the South Asian region. So it's not only the influence of China which comes into play, but there are other powers that be, Russia being in particular. The other, we attended the Asian European People's Forum in Ulaanbaatar in Mongolia, and we were talking to a few Mongolian delegates, both from the government as well as civil society. It seems Mongolia is precariously placed with the same choices as Philippines does. You have a historical relationship with Russia, and a previous historical relationship between Mongolia and China, where China invaded. So now with the One Belt One Road, you've got enormous empty space, a limited population in Mongolia, and there's this interest of infrastructure investment all throughout. There's a huge copper and coal mine. Now how will Mongolia play it out best to their interests? They don't want to be occupied by the Russians, they don't want to be taken over by the Chinese. So just an observation there, that this situation of shifting positions, it's quite prevalent now. The other question is actually geopolitical in nature. Therefore, is it safe to assume that regimes which are now coming into play within the One Belt One Road initiative, and if they all decide to join in, both in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Central Asia, I don't want to name anybody, if these regimes are the ones who signed the deal, do they ensure their long-term longevity as the One Belt One Road unfolds?
I know that India is very suspicious of copper. I was together with an Indian special in a panel, Indian scholar, and it was very clear. Particularly because it's a Chinese initiative, and also because, as you saw, the main beneficiary is Pakistan, and India, I think, is still trying to make up its mind exactly how it will participate on the corridor goes through it, particularly because of the geopolitical aspect. And I think the Chinese are aware of it. It's a difficult question because it involves the India-China rivalry in South Asia, and the Chinese, of course, are going around, and now they'd like to link it up if possible. And so it's a challenge actually to India how to respond to this in a way. But I think the current government of India, on the one hand, is also trying to improve the political relations in terms of the border disputes, although problems continue. And the over initiative, particularly mainly because the Chinese
have the resources. This is the problem, and it's being rolled out in quite a methodical. It's still slow actually, but fairly methodical, and then in what directions it will go. I don't know. Has India signed the Articles of Membership? It's already submitted. No projects yet. Right? No projects submitted. Tamil Nadu. Not in what is it? In the area. So I'd like to see when they start considering. The president of AIIB was recently in Nepal, and apparently there are a number of projects that Nepal is also submitting. So there is a rush actually in terms of submission of projects to the board. AIIB, as you probably mentioned earlier, it's still very lean. 90 people running the operation. They're still hiring. They hired a Turkish treasurer recently. So they're trying to start in a very lean. Only the office is only in Beijing. But it's going to be a challenge how they will try to be clean and green. I was reading an interview of Jim Lucien, the president, and you could see there were certain priorities and compromises along the road, you know, where development is considered a priority over environment, particularly if it involves coal power plant and there's no alternative. You can see they're going that direction. I think though that what they're trying to be careful of is where, and that's why it's worth going into that hydropower project, the people's acceptance. How many will be displaced? How many will be resettled? I don't have all the details of that, but as your group goes to monitor their activities, it's the same challenges for all of them. ADB, World Bank. In a sense, what's happening here, they're starting small, but they're backed up by a lot of resources. And so they're still trying to work together with ADB and World Bank and all the other institutions. First, to ease the concerns. But I think the basic approach is once they become accepted, then they'll try out bolder steps. How long that will take to be a while. It's quite possible. I think they're going to close the window on membership soon. I mean, by next year. And so what happens next? And you know, they're basically fleshing out the organization right now. So it's really at a very rudimentary stage. But so far, no major scandal that I know of, or no major violation, because we were expecting, you know, corruption, environmental problems. They've been pretty cautious so far. Yeah, they're feeling their way. They're feeling their way. So, and it stands to reason because they have to prove themselves. They know there's a lot of eyes looking at them. It would be a major victory if the U.S. comes in. And they're also trying to, there's something about Hong Kong and Taiwan, because they want to raise funds in Hong Kong. And some problems about Taiwan on the terms of membership that will save face for Taiwan. But so this is where actually Chinese policy is manifested on how they will deal with Taiwan. And it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with that challenge, especially because it's a DPP controlled regime right now in Taiwan, and the mainland is trying to constrict their international space, and this is one platform, the AIIB, which actually could be an exception because it deals with economics, but I think in terms of membership, how they would be considered is a standing problem. Mongolia. They have an interesting, we actually, for a long time were dominated by the Russians. And then they became liberal democratic, or they tried. They're still struggling. So what happens to Mongolia? The Chinese, I think, are in favor of Mongolia that is not controlled by the Soviets. But they also would like to extend their influence there. However, I think the regime, the problem is mainly internal from what I can see. They have a lot of problems in terms of stability, political stability. It's hard to follow things would move. But they're also, I haven't seen a project yet. I haven't seen a project. So it's a case study in terms of what will happen there.
It's the first piece of the belt.
Yes. It's the way out. It's the way out. It's the way out of China. But the railway continues though. It passes through there. The one certainly going to Russia, but the European one goes down from the south, Central Asia. But if they want the one going through the Trans-Siberian railway to proceed, and they want to upgrade, it will go through Mongolia.
Let me jump into this joke here. That's interesting. Yeah, I think that the Trump, not the PRAMB, but the PRAMB, is going to be a game changer. In the sense that I think the China-Pakistan corridor is going to change the equation between India and Pakistan. And that's a problem for India. But India was hoping that the U.S. would change partners or go to India when China was making love to Pakistan. But with Trump sort of probably retreating a little bit from this part of the world, India will have less to lean on, and may decide to get closer to China to change the equation between China and Pakistan. But it's going to be a power game that we discussed earlier within the AIIB. But if the BRICS really consolidate their thing, and China is talking about a supermajority in the AIIB for more transparency and everything else, then this is going to be an interesting game.
Just one question. To provide more clarification on the statement that the TPP is not there. Because the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement puts more power or gives more premium on corporations, provides them greater rights. We have the AAIB, which is another platform, infrastructure bank. But anyway, the TPP is one way of asserting the influence of the US, the same way that the AAIB is another way of China's asserting its influence.
What is happening now is that something about the TPP can only survive if the US approves it, the US Congress. They require two countries to ratify it, the US and Japan. Japan actually is, I think, it's already done it or is on the verge of doing it. I mean, Abe has put basically his political career on the line with TPP. The US, because of the composition of the Congress right now, and as a result of the election, there's no way it will pass. And until it passes, there's no way it will survive. So they're thinking, one idea I heard from a Singaporean diplomat was Japan could try to revive, but it's going to be a long shot. A TPP without the US. But the same thing, or the other goal is the Japanese are thinking of using RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, is that the RCEP, which has China, but not the US. But the Japanese idea is to try to improve, from their point of view, RCEP to TPP standards, to make it tighter. And this is where it's going to be a big battle, because not all the countries can accept that. If they keep it as is, wherein you basically put together all the free trade agreements and the bilateral trade agreements and form the broad RCEP, then the next stage is the FT, this is the free trade agreement of the Asian Pacific region, which will be the topic now in APEC, and the Chinese are pushing for that. The standards are lower than TPP, you know, when it comes to intellectual property rights, when it comes to environment, when it comes to trade unions. It's a lower standard. The TPP has the highest standards. I mean, even the Philippines will have a very difficult time passing through it, or getting through it. So TPP, I think, is, if not dead dormant right now, it cannot function. And so RCEP has the stage now, and then there's a move to, if you cover the whole Asia Pacific, it's really transforms into FT, AAP. And with the Japanese now trying to see if they can introduce TPP standards, and that's where the battle will be again. It's going to be a long drawn-out battle, and it takes time.
Now, I was going to say that there are three competing paradigms now. This is the TPP, which is the American initiative. There is the Japanese initiative, and then there's the Chinese initiative within the ASEAN, the PP free trade area. Again, the Trump is the game changer, because the Japanese muscles more or less associated with the U.S. So if the U.S. shows some weakness in this part of the world, the thing will be that the Chinese initiative will probably be superior to the TPP.
I don't know the exact answer to that. Actually, you may know. This guy right address you on
Okay, we have 5 minutes, so we can wrap it up.
Yes, no, yeah. Just to remind the people in this room that the Aiib is a building. It's a building in China, occupied by 57 countries. Admittedly, 30% is that is Chinese. But there are 57 national interests competing with the thing. Even if China thinks that it can, but they push the envelope as far as it can go, they don't do very much. That's how something that they can be in the world now. So I think among themselves, some things will, some compromises will, which will act as safeguards and competing national interests. At least I hope so.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. And for us who are battling for a 1.5 degree and also complying the Paris Agreement and all these things, we are going to be vigilant in ensuring that these are all according to our needs. And of course, we have raised questions on social protection, accountability, public disclosure. That's also another one. We want AIIB, if that's possible at all, to be open and be able to allow for public consultations. And with that, we would like to thank everyone, Attorney Margarita, Ambassador Romero, Ambassador Santa Romana, our civil society representatives, academics, the students, and the UP Asian Center. Thank you very much. We hope to see you.